Well, welcome back to the Culture Based Podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. We have made it to the end of June. All month long, Blake, we've talked about at what point of the month are we in. And I don't know why we're so obsessed with it, but it's just the first thing that comes to my mind when we roll into this recording. So I'm sticking with it. Here we made it to the last episode of June 25th. Today we're going to talk about how to maintain a clear vision. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to tell you right now, a little life hack on maintaining a clear vision. Blake just took a big old sip of coffee, and I'm going to say that does it for me every time. It's not going to be in today's episode. That's just a free gift for you. How you feeling, Blake? You ready for today's episode?
Yeah, I'm pumped.
All right, so let's get into it. I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get them there. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, I would love for you to follow, like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever the podcast platform prompts you to do, because they're all different and they can't seem to get on the same page about how they want you to interact with them. Just go ahead and interact with them in the best and most positive way possible for us. That would be amazing. We really appreciate that, and helps get this content out further to those like yourself who can benefit from it. If you're watching on YouTube, hello there. Hope you have your coffee as well. I finished my cup already, and it's just good old H2O for me for this episode, which is good. Water's good, right? It's clear, like the clear vision we're going to talk about today.
Ooh, I see what you did there. That was good.
Good.
I did, but it took a little bit more than I probably should have, to be honest.
I felt like it was a stretch.
You're like, it's clear, and I'm like, that's true. And then you're
That's
like,
true.
right, today's episode, and I was
water
like,
is clear.
Man, I should have saw that.
Yeah, it's all good. We're just getting started. So if you're with us still, God bless you. But also, you can follow us on all the social media platforms at the Culture Base, BASE. We're Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Or you can find us at theculturebase.com. And we got some really cool free resources and tools coming there soon. We cannot wait to share those with you. But until then, let's get to today's episode. Look, we look at building scalable teams, and it all starts with a clear vision, right? And given how much we love acronyms at the Culture Base, our simple framework for creating and maintaining a clear vision is spelled out in the word clear, CLEAR. Today, we'll walk through this simple framework for you and your team to maintain a vision that a scalable team can follow. Wait for it. Clearly.
Well done. Well done. You know, as a couple weeks ago, the last couple episodes, I keep kind of coming back to this thing that Caleb said, our one and only guest we've had on this podcast at this point. And the thing he talked about is making sure that your culture has the ability for people to connect when it comes to identity, community, and opportunity. And I think that it's hard for us to get into vision and to get into this idea of clear. Obviously, it's an acronym. It's hard for us to get into that without first prefacing there. How is your vision hitting those areas? How is it hitting the identity aspect, the community aspect, and the opportunity aspect? And I think that that's where we want to dive in a little deeper. But you got to kind of like have that as a standard before we jump in. So I just wanted to preface with that. I'll let you kind of take it from here, but I just think it's important for us to have that before we dive into, I want to make $10 million. And you just like misalign because something's exciting or sexy instead of understanding it's got to hit those things.
Yeah, so I want to give some context to today's topic. If you haven't already listened to, we did a series, I don't know, it was maybe 5-part series. I can't remember how long it was. It was just a couple of months ago that we did this series called Are You Scalable? And in that, we went through kind of the context of your team asking that question, are you scalable? And what your scalability likelihood would be, or your scalability score. And so with that kind of assessment, vision is the third piece of our baseline equation in that. And we talked about that first baseline equation being that you have the right people connected to the right work with the right clarity, which is the vision piece. right, clarity on their purpose. And so we add all those three things up. We multiply that times the environment that is sustainable for growth and development, and then the percentage of accountable communication. And so today we're going to focus in on that piece of the first part of the formula, the right clarity on purpose, which we call the vision. And so we talked about how we have an acronym for this. I joke on acronyms all the time, but it really is an easy way for us to remember it. As I was preparing for today's show, I was like, okay, yeah, I need to write our notes down that our acronym is clear. And in my mind, without even thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, it's communicated, lasting, exciting. Really, like I was all of a sudden like I had it memorized already, and we have only been talking about this now for a couple of months, and so it really is. It seems kind of immature, I think, at some level, where you're just like, oh, that's child's games of making an acronym for everything. But it really does help, at least me in my brain. So we get to our first C in this: how we communicate clear vision, how we maintain clarity in our vision. Blake, and we get to the first C, which is obviously we have to communicate it, right? We ask the question, how well is the vision or the purpose communicated? How regularly is it communicated? Is it communicated creatively, or is it just boring? Is it a Dwight Schrute, it is your birthday period? Or are we actually going to throw a party around this thing? Are there stories attached to it? Do you celebrate wins? Do you discuss losses and failures, all centered around the vision? These are things that will help you communicate it. What else you got in the communication piece?
Yeah, I love the stories aspect. In fact, I think anytime you're talking vision, as a visionary speaking here, anytime you're talking vision, if you don't use stories, then all you're doing is telling people about a thing, right? Yeah. And they have zero context to it. When you
it's
can
just
put
information, not transformation.
Exactly. And when you're able to say it in such a way that, first off, stories hit our brains and our minds and our emotions and our hearts very differently than just telling information, right? That's why I like just jumping on and seeing a news feed that just has information about what's going on doesn't hit like the story about an emotional person connected to a story in a news feed. That changes hearts. So I definitely think if you're not trying to just tell people about vision, you're trying to help them catch vision. Okay, it's almost like a sickness. You want them to catch that thing. Okay, so that's what we want to be about there. Now, another aspect of communicating our vision, it's really important, is that the deeper you share vision with your team, the more education you are going to need to provide. If you share vision, you have to pair that with education. If you start sharing vision that's 10 layers deep and they don't understand the 10 layers prior to that, they're going to be lost. They're going to think it's ridiculous. They're not going to understand the heart behind it. Okay, that's another reason why stories are so good here. But when we share our vision with people, one of three things is going to happen. Okay, one, when we see we have to share vision, we're either not going to share vision. Okay, like the more we know, hey, I've got to share vision and education, you're probably gonna be like, oh, that just seems like so much work. I don't want to have to share all that vision if I have to pair it with education. So one, we're not going to share. What's that?
It is work.
It is work. You're 100% right. We're either not going to share, we're going to overshare uneducatedly. Okay, so we're going to be like, oh, here's all the stuff, and now you get it. And then we're going to walk away, and people are going to be like, oh,
that breeds panic.
Gosh. Yeah, they're going to freak out. Or you're able to share with the right amount of education respective to the vision and what it requires. And I don't know what that is for you. I don't know how much education you're going to have to share. And sometimes it depends on the person, not on the level of information you're sharing, where they're at with the education aspect or what they know about your vision. That's why the best time to share vision is when you're trying to attract them, during the hiring, during the onboarding, during their first 90 days, every year after that, like chronologically, you've got to be sharing the vision constantly and in different creative ways, like Dustin said, so that they're able to start going, oh, now I see why we're doing next said thing.
Yeah. So if you're a leader listening to this, whether you're in mid-level management, or you lead the small team in your department, or you're all the way up at the top in the C-suite, if you're asking yourself when is the best time to share vision, the answer always is right now.
Yeah.
It's right now. It doesn't matter if you're in the beginning phases of them onboarding. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle rut years of just kind of the messy middle type of situation of whatever you're building, or if it's, hey, we just saw this thing through. The appropriate time to share vision is always right now.
And it's like that saying about when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is 30 years ago. And when is the next best time to plant a tree? Right now.
Yeah.
Same thing with vision. Okay. Vision and tree planting equivalent.
Yep. For sure. For sure. So our first C in the CLEAR acronym is communicated. That brings us to our second letter, L, which stands for lasting. So here's what we mean when we ask, is your vision lasting? Is this a big vision that will last through the scaling portion of the organization, or will it fizzle out? Is it too easily reachable? And what I think about when I think about this lasting piece in the CLEAR vision kind of framework, I always think about BHAGs. If you don't know what a BHAG is, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And I was introduced to BHAGs back in college. So the big, hairy, audacious part means it's not super easily attainable. Okay. It's going to take a lot of effort, usually a long time on a timeline or a time frame. This is going to take a bit to get to. Could take decades before you see it come to fruition. If it's something that you're like, you know what, this is our vision for the year, then I would say that's more of a goal, not a vision.
Yeah.
Your vision is something that lasts a long time. So I'm looking at time scale here and saying, will this last a long time, or will it fizzle out? Is it too easily achievable? If so, level it up.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I would say there, add on, is like, your vision will change. Okay. There are aspects of your vision that are going to adjust, just like all your processes that you want to be perfect are always going to continue to evolve and transform. It's probably the better word. They're going to continue to transform. However, is the heart and the character, like if your company and your team was a person, is the heart and the character of that person striving for greatness and striving for transformation going to remain the same in nature? So that would be the only thing I would add on the lasting side.
Yeah, I think we get it. So it's communicated, it's lasting. That brings us to our middle letter of E. Is it exciting? Now, here's where I think we often lose a lot of leaders, especially visionaries at the top, like Blake, people like that. They go, you know what? Our vision doesn't have to be emotional. It doesn't have to have some emotional connection to it. It shouldn't necessarily like swell up some kind of excitement or joy in people. It is what it is, and that's what we're going after. And you just go after it blindly because that's what we said so. Yep. That's not the way the world works. Your team will not follow after a vision that doesn't excite them. And going back to the onboarding and the hiring and the attracting kind of portion of these building blocks of a scalable team, right? This is where you go, hey, if this vision doesn't excite you, you're going to hate working here.
Yeah.
Because everything that we're about is this vision here. And if that doesn't get them excited, it's just not a good fit. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, doesn't mean they're a bad employee, or they don't have the right skill or the competency or whatever. It just means that it's not going to be a good fit, and you're going to constantly be fighting against it because they're going to want to take it this way, you're going to want to take it the other way, and it's going to be constant friction. So what we're saying here, the question in exciting is anyone excited about that vision or about your vision, or are we just punching a clock? Are we just coming in and going like, this is a job, I'm here for the paycheck, I'm in, I'm out, don't talk to me before or after before I get here or after I leave. This has nothing, my life is my life, stay out of it, it's completely separate. That's the sign of you don't have an exciting vision. And maybe you do have an exciting vision, but no one knows about it. That gets into the communicated part, right? Or maybe you had an exciting vision, but you got to it too quickly. And that would be the lasting portion, right? So you have to make sure that people are excited about your vision. And honestly, leader, it starts with you. If you're not excited about your own vision, how can you expect your team to be excited about it? How can you expect your peers in the same level of leadership that you're in, to be excited about it if you're not excited about it. I love the phrase, use it all the time: the speed of the leader, the speed of the team. If you don't show that you're excited about this vision, then no one else will. No one will ever exceed your level of excitement with this company. And so if you want to raise the level up, you kind of have to bring that level up even further than what you are now. We talked about, I think it was last episode where one of the last couple of episodes we talked about, where we were like, hey, in this theater, kind of environment, you have to kind of show, actually, this is just a private conversation we had. It's not in an episode at all. Either way, it's relevant. So if you're in a live theater production, you have to kind of over exaggerate your facial expression so the people in the back of the room can understand it and see what's going on, right? Whereas if you're on a TV screen, you don't have to, because the camera's like right up here on your face. This is where I think about when I think about the leader interacting with the exciting portion of the clear vision, is they have to kind of over accentuate a little bit how excited they are, because so that their team will at least rise up to a certain level and share the same type of excitement as they do. What do you think about this exciting aspect of the clear vision, Blake?
Yeah, it makes me think of, Dustin and I met at church a long time ago, and he was running the like production and worship music up on stage. And I remember one time Dustin said, nobody will outperform you. Nobody will over give what they've got. And if part of leading people into that place is going over and beyond on the exciting, there is definitely a line. Don't be cheesy. Like, don't be so overwhelmingly countercultural cheesy. But I think a lot of times when it comes to exciting, we think in our heads, like, I don't think being too corny is usually the problem. Mm-hmm. I think it's that we think in our heads that any excitement I'm sharing is like too much. And we're all afraid of being too much for people. Yeah. I don't think you're going to run into that. So.
Yeah, well, I echo what Blake's saying. There's a fine line between fake and authentic in this realm, and in leadership in general. You need to be, if it's not authentic excitement, don't even try. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, it has to excite you as a leader. The vision has to excite you as a leader, and if it doesn't, everyone's going to know it. No matter how much you try to go, I'm just going to fake this excitement until I feel this excitement. How about in this particular area? Either be excited about it or change it, right? Because if you're not excited about it, it's not going to inspire others. And that's what this vision is all about, right? Having the right clarity on the purpose. You want people to show up to work with purpose, Blake, then you have to be excited about it. That brings us to our fourth letter in the acronym. I had to count real quick, CLEA, which is actionable. So here, Blake, I like to ask, does this vision inspire or call you to immediate action, or is it confusing in any way? When I hear this vision, do I go, I know what I need to do, or I have an idea, or is it go like, well, that could really kind of go a couple of ways. I don't really know. You know what I mean? Like, so if it's not immediately actionable, then I think you need to tweak it a little bit. What do you think about this actionable step here, Blake?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great way to say, like, when someone says it, do I have an immediate click, or like, hey, I need to be doing this, or, hey, my piece to our company or to our growth is this. What do I need to do? And I think a lot of times a good litmus is, as you do that, if there is just confusion everywhere, that's a good sign that you're not clear enough, right? You're not clear enough on the actionability to it. It might be exciting. It might even be lasting. You're even probably communicating it well, but it isn't clear that there are like the steps that need to happen next, right? Yeah. So if we can't take that, we've got problems. And what I see happen a lot is that we generally talk about high-level company vision, and we hear like, oh, you got to have vision for your company. And you're like, yeah, I got to have vision for my company. And then you're like, what's that mean? Like, what do I do with that? Yeah. But we need to, like, this seems maybe counter what we've been talking about with vision, it being like this big thing, but of like zooming out to see it. But then you've got to zoom back in when actionability comes. You've got to zoom in and say, okay, so now our company, like we need to have vision, and we need to make sure that we're hitting and taking into consideration the sales team, the ops team, the finance and admin team, our people team. Like, what are all those things that we need to make sure that our vision isn't maybe outpunting the coverage of one of those areas? You know, this is where we've got to, like, hey, we can say, like, sales team, let's go for 30 million. By the way, ops team, we know you did 2 million last year. 30 million is just a number. It's not just a number. There are so many other things that get added to that. And your finance team's like, we don't have enough leverage to grow to 30 million right now. What are you doing? Like, so there's such so many aspects to actionable vision that you've got to think through the pieces. So it's fun to zoom out and be visionary, but the actionable aspect is when you got to zoom back in and start getting a little more tangible. And a good visionary gives not all direction, but gives spark direction to each of those areas. Hey, sales team, here's a spark. I need you to fan the flame. Hey, ops team, here's a spark. I need you to fan the flame and take it. And so that's where the vision's got to be that spark, but it's got to have something for them to do. So if any team is like, I don't know what to do, it's not clear and actionable vision.
Yeah. And I would say too, just to kind of wrap up this actionable step as well, like if a good leader takes people along with them on the journey. They don't necessarily always tell them exactly what it's going to look like when we get there. We're not asking you to paint a picture that's a total exact, this is what it's going to be like when we get there, because you don't know. And to be upfront about how you don't know just carries the strength of your leader even more. But what I'm getting at is that you cannot have a vision that only calls you and your leadership team to action and leaves everybody else behind. Too many times I've been a part of team cultures where the leadership team or the exec team or whoever's at the top, that kind of team at the top, they know exactly what's going on. They're all in. It's been communicated with them. It's lasting to them. It's super exciting to them. They're taking the action, but no one else is. Everyone else is just sitting around and going, well, I guess you guys kind of have it and you'll just let us know if you need anything, right? Like that's not an actionable vision. That's just an actionable team. And what you can see, if you're in a situation right now where you're like, that sounds like the team that I'm in right now, it usually is because that they missed the very beginning part of this framework, and that's to communicate it. Like, I think a lot of times, I say this all the time, I think a lot of times leaders think about something so much that they've convinced themselves that that thought has made its way out of their lips into the ears of the people that they're leading. But really, it hasn't. Really, it's just that they thought about it so much that they're like, yeah, I must have communicated this at some point. It's because you went to bed thinking about it. You woke up thinking about it. And you're thinking about it over lunch, and you're talking about it at different networking events. Meanwhile, the people in the middle and the bottom of the totem pole, they can't read your thoughts. Mm-hmm. They have no idea what's going on. And so part of being a good leader and providing that clear vision is bringing them along on the journey with you. And I love what Blake said too about having those little sparks. Let them fan it and flame. Give them that ownership. Say, here's a spark of vision. Go for it. And if I need to come in and redirect, I'll come in and redirect, because that's just being a good leader.
Yeah. And to even add on there with what Dustin was talking about with that, like, leaders tend to think and think and think and think about all these things. And so their conclusions they come to with vision almost see like a stair step, right? You've got a stair step that they're learning and thinking. They're learning the next part. They're learning the next part, thinking about it, working through the vision. And so, like, all those steps to get up to that next level before it turns and goes another direction, leaders have thought about. This is why education is so important and communication is so important, because you haven't told anyone else any of that stuff. You've actually just treated it like it didn't exist. And this is what masters of their craft have done, is they don't remember what it was like to not know all the supporting information to get to the thing, or all the emergent learning that has to happen to get to this new paradigm. And so when you start talking at that level, it's like you're talking at the middle to the end of the sentence and expecting everybody else to understand everything that was just done. And they won't. So that's why so much education and explanation has to be done. That's why stories are so great, because a story both explains and like lands the plane or whatever of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Last letter of the CLEAR acronym is obviously R, which for us is very simple. It just has to be relevant. It just has to be relevant. If you're a company who is trying to figure out how to sell landline telephones in the year 2024,
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead on and say that probably somewhere in your vision is a lack of relevancy. Yeah. So the question here is the vision still relevant in today's world, in today's market, in today's culture, or is it outdated and no longer applicable to the times? Are you trying to sell a rotary phone in 2024? Ask yourself.
Or are you doing the opposite and going too far out into the future? Okay. And let's think about Elon Musk has been in the limelight.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah. He's been in the limelight of this stuff for a long time, but he also, I think it was him who was it PayPal or something like that? I don't remember what his original thing was, but it wasn't anything to do with what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. But he probably had some of that stuff in his mind already working.
Yeah.
But he knew that it had to be relevant in relevant portions, that we can't start this until technology's gotten to a certain point, right? So this is where, are you forecasting vision maybe too far out that maybe you need to keep in, because it's like that stair step mentality. You need to start keep chewing on it until you see here's where you want to be, here's where you're at. And until they come up with and invent something like this that's going to fix this problem, or hey, maybe I step in and do that, fix that said problem, we can't even have this conversation because everyone's going to think I'm nuts, right? I remember, 20 years ago when people are like, let's go to Mars. I was like, you guys are crazy. You're nuts. Why are we trying to do this? And today, we're commercializing space travel, and okay, it's more realistic. I'm not saying we're going there tomorrow, but it's much more realistic. And, the billionaires, the trillionaires are the ones who are like, let's go for a space flight. And they can do that now. And tomorrow it's going to be just, hey, welcome to Six Flags. You want to go to space? And you're like, oh, cool. I haven't tried that ride, So I think that you got to be careful about forecasting too much ahead of time when people haven't gotten, it's just not there yet.
Yeah. That's good, because my family's heading to Six Flags a week from today. So I cannot wait to find out where they're at on the shuttle ride.
Yeah.
Experience.
I see that roller coaster goes up about 100 feet. What do you think about space travel?
I mean, if you're up 100 feet in the air, you're pretty much already almost to space anyway.
Well, just keep it going.
You might as well just keep it going. That's not how air travel works. Anyway, that was great. I'm so glad that we were able to spend time on that acronym. Next week, we're going to tackle another acronym. It'll be a little bit shorter, 4 letters, but we're going to back up a little bit and go back to the will to work. Does your team and does your company have the right will to work? And the word will, WILL, will be another acronym for sure. But we can't wait to talk to you then. I want to remind you that you can go to theculturebase.com, click on the strategy button if you would like to talk with us and see how we can help you maintain this clear vision in your organization or any of the topics that we've talked about so far. Go back and listen to this. We're coming up on, I think our next episode, Blake, will be 50 episodes.
Whoa.
Can you imagine? Isn't that crazy? Crazy. Episode 50. Can't wait to get into that with y'all as we talk about the will to work next time on the Culture Base podcast. Have a great week.